Let's gain an intuition about leverage, the borrowing of money to extend the potential for upside beyond one's current means. I'll focus on the borrower's perspective and incentives. The lenders, of course, have incentives as well, sometimes contradictory. We'll see that leverage magnifies both the upside and downsides of investment, as well as provides an incentive for further leverage. Suppose you'd like to buy a $500,000 house and have $50,000 to put down, or 10%. You would therefore borrow 90%, or $450,000. Your balance sheet, showing assets and liabilities with regard to the house, would look something like this. Let's look at two scenarios, one where the house value increases and one where it decreases. Suppose the house increases in value by 5%, and the house is now worth $525,000. For the sake of easier numbers, assume you are only paying interest on your loan, so you still owe $450,000, and your $50,000 equity turned into $75,000. A 50% increase in your equity with a 5% increase in the value of the underlying asset. Here we mean value is what the house would sell for now, so same as spot price. For a 10% increase in house price, your equity would increase to $100,000. A 100% increase, and for a 20% increase in the house value, or a house spot price of $600,000, your equity is $150,000. That's a 300% increase. Now for the downside. If your house decreases by 5% to $475,000 and you still owe $450,000, then your equity is $25,000. That's a 50% decrease. Likewise, a 10% decrease would result in losing 100% of the original equity of $50,000. At a 20% loss, your equity is minus $50,000. Here's a plot of equity percent change versus value percent change for various equity contributions. We see that the less your contribution is, the greater your percent change in equity, both on the upside and on the downside. This is why loans for investment are called leverage. The greater your equity to loan ratio, the higher your percentage return on the upside, and the greater your risk of loss on the downside. Of course, higher loans incur higher interest rates and repayment costs, but the short-term leverage dynamics are driven by the fact that higher leverage amount yields greater percentage returns to equity. Reducing the amount of the loan and increasing equity has two consequences from the borrower perspective. Increasing equity means increasing the amount of the borrower's contribution that is at risk in the case of loss of value, especially for loans backed by real estate assets, since default may only require forfeiture of the underwater property. It also means that percentage gains in equity decrease. Suppose you'd like to make a $20,000 improvement on your $500,000 house with $50,000 equity and a $450,000 loan. Should you spend $20,000 additional equity or take out an additional mortgage? If the house is now valued at $520,000 with $70,000 equity and a $450,000 loan, a 10% increase in value to $572,000 yields a new equity value of $122,000, which is a 74.35% change from $70,000. If instead you take in a second mortgage, $572,000 value with a $470,000 loan is $102,000 in equity, which is a 204% change from $50,000. Clearly, though 122 is greater than 102, you get a better return on your equity with the additional mortgage, and you'd still only risk 50K instead of 70K. Consequences of default, interest rates, and loan servicing obligations will somewhat alter these dynamics, but hopefully, if you didn't have this already, you may have a better sense of why leverage is so appealing. Thus far, we've only talked about mortgages for your house, but it should be clear that a company with cash would still choose to borrow to make an investment due to the gains and indemnity inherent in leverage. See Thurner et al. On Leverage Causes Fat Tails in your reading list.